The security guard's hand was on my shoulder, firm but not unkind, as he walked me out of the Magnolia Ballroom in downtown Atlanta. My own daughter stood there in her white dress, watching me leave the wedding reception I'd paid $47,000 for. She didn't even look me in the eye, just whispered something to her new mother-in-law, that woman with the pearls and the judgment in her smile. The whole room of 300 guests watched me shuffle out like I was some drunk uncle who'd caused a scene. But I hadn't had a single drink. I was just the wrong kind of father for the story my daughter wanted to tell. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you raised, someone you loved more than your own breath, then you know this feeling. Hey there, family. Before we dive into this story that still makes my chest tight, hit that like button and subscribe if you believe in second chances. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. Your support keeps these stories alive. My name is Samuel Sam Whitfield. I'm 73 years old now, but I was 68 when this happened. Born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, but I'd been living in Atlanta for 30 years by the time my baby girl Jasmine decided I wasn't good enough for her new life. This is the hardest story I've ever had to tell, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe you're sitting where I sat 5 years ago, wondering how love can turn to shame so fast. I remember the morning Jasmine called me about Marcus proposing, February 14th, 2019, Valentine's Day, and my phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Her voice was pure sunshine, the way it used to be when she was 7 and lost her first tooth. Daddy, he asked me. Marcus asked me to marry him at the Fox Theater, right on stage after the show. That joy in her voice made every sacrifice worth it. Every double shift I'd worked at the warehouse, every birthday I'd missed trying to keep the lights on after her mother Gloria passed. I told her I was happy for her, and I meant it. Marcus came from what they call good stock. His family owned 3 Mercedes dealerships across Georgia, lived in Buckhead, the kind of black folks who summer in Martha's Vineyard. The wedding planning started innocent enough. Jasmine would come by my little house in East Point every Sunday after church, and we'd go through magazines and websites together. She'd make her special sweet potato pie, the recipe I taught her that my grandmother taught me. We'd laugh about flower arrangements and argue about music. She wanted a DJ. I suggested a live band. Daddy, nobody does live bands anymore, she'd say, but she'd squeeze my hand like she did when she was small and scared of thunderstorms. Those Sundays felt like healing. After Gloria died from the cancer in 2014, it had just been me and Jasmine against the world. Even when she went off to Spelman, even when she got that marketing job downtown, she never made me feel like I was losing her. Not until Marcus's family entered the picture. The first time I met the Hamiltons was at their country club in April. Marcus's mother, Patricia, looked at my Toyota Corolla in their circular driveway like it was bleeding oil on her marble. His father, Dr. Richard Hamilton, shook my hand, but his eyes were already dismissing me. A warehouse supervisor didn't register in his world of medical conferences and golf tournaments. They asked about my work, my education, my connections. When I said I'd raised Jasmine alone after my wife died, Patricia touched her pearls and said, "How admirable," in that way that sounds like sympathy but tastes like pity. Jasmine sat there, shrinking into herself, and for the first time I saw her look at me through their eyes. The work boots I'd polished, the calluses on my hands, the gap between my front teeth I'd never fixed because dental work meant no Christmas that year. Marcus himself wasn't bad, just weak. 28 years old with an MBA and a weak handshake. He called me Mr. Whitfield, even after I told him to call me Sam. He talked about portfolios and market futures while I talked about the Braves and good barbecue joints. But he loved Jasmine, or at least he looked at her like she was precious, and that was enough for me. I pulled him aside that day at the country club and told him straight, "You treat her like the queen she is, and we won't have problems." He nodded, adjusted his designer glasses, and promised he would. Looking back, I should have seen it, how he glanced at his mother first, like he needed permission to make that promise. But I was blinded by Jasmine's happiness and my own pride that my baby girl was marrying up, as they say. The moment everything started changing was when Patricia Hamilton offered to help with the wedding planning. May rolled into June, and suddenly Jasmine wasn't coming by on Sundays anymore. She was at the Hamilton estate, picking out china patterns and discussing aesthetic themes with Patricia. When she did call, she sounded different, practiced, like she was reading from a script. The Hamiltons think maybe we should consider the Ritz-Carlton instead of that church in East Point. The Hamiltons know this wonderful photographer from their club. The Hamiltons suggested. Always the Hamiltons. I bit my tongue because I saw how badly Jasmine wanted their approval, how she'd light up when Patricia complimented her taste or when Dr. Hamilton mentioned her to his colleagues. But every suggestion pushed me further to the edges of my own daughter's wedding. The band I wanted became a DJ from their friend's son. The soul food buffet became contemporary fusion cuisine. And the guest list? Well, that's where things got interesting. By July, the wedding had transformed into something I didn't recognize. Jasmine brought the final plans to my house on a Wednesday evening, the air thick with summer heat and unspoken tension. The budget had gone from the $20,000 I'd saved to $47,000. "Daddy, I know it's a lot," she said, not meeting my eyes, "but the Hamiltons are inviting some very important people. The mayor might come. There's a judge who golfs with Dr. Hamilton. This could open doors for Marcus's career." I looked at this woman who used to dance barefoot in our kitchen and saw a stranger in designer heels. But I also saw Gloria in her face, that same determination, that same hunger for something better than what life had handed her. So I did what any father would do. I went to the bank the next morning and took out a second mortgage on the house I'd spent 20 years paying off. The invitation list was where I should have spoken up. Out of 300 guests, I knew maybe 30. My brother Jerome from Memphis, my cousins from Birmingham, the folks from my church, and a handful of work friends. The rest were the Hamiltons' world, doctors, lawyers, business owners, and their children who'd gone to private schools with Marcus. Jasmine had even cut my friend Big Tommy, who'd been like an uncle to her since she was 5, because Patricia said he might not blend well with the atmosphere. But she kept every single person from Marcus's fraternity, including the one who'd gotten arrested for fraud the year before. When I pointed this out, Jasmine got defensive. "Daddy, this is about our future. Marcus and I need to network with the right people." The right people. As if the man who'd walked her to school every morning and taught her to ride a bike was suddenly the wrong people. I remember sitting in the warehouse break room in August, calculator in hand, figuring out how many overtime shifts I'd need to cover the wedding and still make the new mortgage payments. My supervisor, Carlos, who'd known me 15 years, asked what had me looking so tired. When I told him about the wedding, he whistled low. "Sam, that's more than I paid for my house in '98. But then he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "But that's what we do for our kids, right? We give them better than what we had." I nodded, but something in my chest felt hollow. Better. Was this better? Jasmine in her new BMW that Marcus bought her, looking uncomfortable when I hugged her because my work shirt might wrinkle her silk blouse? Better was supposed to feel like progress, not like losing something you couldn't name. The rehearsal dinner was when I knew I was in trouble. The Hamiltons hosted it at their country club, and I showed up in my best suit, the charcoal gray one I'd bought for Gloria's funeral. Patricia took one look at me and suggested, sweetly, that perhaps Marcus's father had a jacket I could borrow. "The lighting in the main dining room can be unforgiving," she said, as if the problem was the lighting and not my existence. I kept my suit on, sat at the table they'd placed me at, not the main family table, but one to the side with Marcus's distant cousins and plus ones nobody really knew. I watched Jasmine laugh at Dr. Hamilton's stories, watched her practice the same pearl-touching gesture Patricia did, watched her introduce Marcus's Yale buddies with more enthusiasm than she'd shown when her own cousin Keisha arrived. That night, driving home alone through the Atlanta streets, I stopped at the cemetery where Gloria was buried. Sat there in the dark, talking to her headstone like she could hear me. "Baby, I don't know if I'm doing right by our girl," I said to the granite and grass. "She's got everything you wanted for her, the education, the successful man, the big wedding, but it feels like I'm losing her to get it." The silence was heavy, But then a breeze came through, rattling the magnolia trees, and I could almost hear Gloria's voice. Samuel Whitfield, you stop that self-pity right now. You show up for our baby no matter what. So I dried my eyes, went home, and practiced my father of the bride speech one more time. The one Jasmine had asked me to keep short and sweet. You know, nothing too emotional, Daddy. The Hamiltons don't really do the whole crying thing. September arrived with its false promises of cooler weather, and the wedding machine kicked into high gear. Jasmine called me on a Tuesday morning, voice strange and formal. Daddy, Patricia thinks it would be nice if you and some of your guests come a bit later to the reception. You know, after the formal photographs with the immediate family. Immediate family. 40 years of raising her alone, and suddenly I wasn't immediate family. But there was something else in her voice, a tremor, like she was reading from a script she didn't want to read. Baby girl, are you okay? I asked. There was a pause, then. I'm fine, Daddy. It's just, the Hamiltons have a certain way they want things documented. For the society pages. The society pages. My daughter, who used to make mud pies in the backyard and sing into a hairbrush, was worried about the society pages. The bachelor party happened the next weekend, and Marcus didn't invite me. I found out from my nephew Terrell, who worked valet at the hotel where they held it. Uncle Sam, wasn't you supposed to be there? I saw Marcus and all them dudes, but... The boy didn't finish, seeing something in my face that made him stop. Later, Jasmine explained that it was just for the young folks, and that Dr. Hamilton hadn't gone either. But I'd seen the pictures on Marcus's Instagram. Dr. Hamilton was right there, cigar in hand, laughing with his son's friends, like he was one of them. That was the night I started keeping a journal, writing down all the things I couldn't say out loud. Pages and pages of hurt that Gloria would have known how to handle, but I was drowning in alone. My brother Jerome drove down from Memphis the week before the wedding, 65 years old, still built like the linebacker he'd been in high school, and still had no filter. He took one look at the wedding preparations and shook his head. Sam, what the hell is this? This ain't Jasmine. This is some bougie nonsense. We sat on my porch drinking sweet tea like we did when we were kids, and I told him everything. He listened, jaw tight, then said, You remember when Daddy told us about picking cotton with his daddy? How the overseer would make them enter through the back of the plantation house, even though they were the ones who built it? I knew where he was going, but I didn't want to hear it. This ain't the same thing, Jerome. He looked at me long and hard. Isn't it, though? You're paying for the plantation, but you still got to come through the back door. 3 days before the wedding, I went for Jasmine's final dress fitting. It was just supposed to be us, our moment, father and daughter, like we'd planned. But when I got to the boutique in Buckhead, Patricia was there with her sister and 2 cousins, all of them fussing over Jasmine, like she was their doll. They barely acknowledged me when I walked in. I sat in the corner, watching my baby girl transform into someone I didn't recognize. The dress cost $12,000, more than my car was worth, and Patricia kept talking about how it photographed well, how it would look perfect in the Hamilton family wedding album. You know, Patricia said, adjusting Jasmine's veil, we've had 3 generations of weddings at the Magnolia Ballroom. This will be the 4th. Then she looked at me, that practiced smile, and added, Of course, your family must have its own traditions. The way she said your family made it clear she meant something else entirely. That night was when everything almost broke. Jasmine came by the house to pick up her something old, Gloria's pearl bracelet that her grandmother had worn. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she'd done homework for 18 years, and for a moment she was my little girl again. Daddy, she said, and her voice cracked. I'm scared. I held her hand, rough against smooth, and asked her what she was scared of. She started crying then, real tears, not the pretty ones she'd learned to cry in front of the Hamiltons. I don't know who I am anymore. Marcus loves who he thinks I am, who his family wants me to be. But sometimes I miss being just Jazzy from East Point. I wanted to tell her to run, to call it all off, to come home. But I saw Gloria in her face again, and I knew this was bigger than just a wedding. This was about every door that had been closed to us, every opportunity we'd been denied, every time we've been told we weren't enough. So I said, baby girl, you be who you need to be. Just don't forget who you are. The morning of October 5th, 2019 started with unusual peace. 4 a.m., I was already awake, pressing my rented tuxedo for the 5th time. The wedding wasn't until 4 in the afternoon, but my hands needed something to do. I made Gloria's pancake recipe, the one with cinnamon and vanilla that Jasmine used to beg for every Saturday. Sat there eating alone, looking at the empty chair where my wife should have been, where my daughter used to sit. The house felt hollow, like it knew it was about to lose something. Outside, Atlanta was just waking up, but I'd been awake for hours, running through my father of the bride speech one more time. Patricia had asked me to email it to her for review, to make sure it was appropriate, but I'd ignored that request. Some things, at least, would remain mine. My phone buzzed at 7. Jasmine, texting from the hotel suite the Hamiltons had rented for her. Daddy, thank you for everything. I know this has been a lot. That was it. Not, I love you. Not, I can't wait to dance with you. Just acknowledgement of the transaction. I texted back, love you, baby girl. Your mama would be so proud. She didn't respond. Later, I'd find out she was already in hair and makeup with Patricia's team, being transformed into the perfect Hamilton bride. They'd hired a makeup artist from Tyler Perry's studios, someone who knew how to make brown skin look refined in photographs. I'd seen the practice photos. Jasmine looked beautiful, but she also looked like someone else's daughter. The wide smile I'd loved was replaced with something smaller, more contained. The laugh that used to fill rooms was now a delicate chuckle. Even her hands moved differently, with Patricia's studied grace instead of Gloria's emphatic gestures. Jerome came by at noon to help me with my cufflinks. My hands were shaking too bad to manage them myself. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. You could still say something. Tell her how you feel. But what was there to say? That I'd mortgaged my future for a wedding where I was a guest? That I'd watched my daughter disappear into someone else's life like quicksand? That every thank you, Daddy, felt like goodbye? No. Today, I would smile. I would walk her down that aisle. I would give my speech and dance one dance and then fade into the background like a good father of the bride was supposed to do. Jerome fastened the last cufflink and squeezed my shoulder. Gloria would have handled this different, he said. Gloria would have fought. I nodded. Gloria also would have wanted Jasmine to have this chance, to be more than we were. The drive to the Magnolia Ballroom felt like a funeral procession. My Corolla looked shabby pulling into the valet stand behind the Mercedes and BMWs and Teslas. The valet kid, maybe 19, took my keys with barely hidden disdain. Inside, the ballroom had been transformed into something from a magazine. $30,000 in flowers alone, orchids and roses, and things I couldn't name, all in white and gold. The Hamiltons' wedding planner, a sharp woman named Catherine, barely looked at me when I asked where I should go. The bride's preparation suite is for the wedding party only, she said, even though I could hear Jasmine laughing behind those doors. Family photographs begin at 3:15. Please be ready in the designated waiting area. The designated waiting area, like I was at the DMV, not my only daughter's wedding. At 3:10, I stood in that waiting area, watching the Hamilton family gather for their photos. Patricia wore a champagne dress that probably cost more than my mortgage payment, diamonds at her throat that caught the light like captured stars. Dr. Hamilton looked like success itself, silver at his temples, custom tuxedo, the kind of watch that whispered rather than shouted its worth. Their other son, Marcus's younger brother David, was telling stories about their family trips to Dubai and Paris, and there was my daughter, emerging from the suite, looking like every dream Gloria ever had for her. Beautiful, accomplished, accepted. But when our eyes met across that room for just 1 second, I saw my little girl again, scared, wondering if she'd made the right choice. Then Patricia called her name, and the moment broke. Jasmine walked over to the Hamiltons, took her place in their family photo, and I stood there, in my rented tuxedo, waiting to be told when it was my turn. The photographer, someone Patricia had flown in from New York, orchestrated the photos like a film director. Mr. Whitfield, could you step back a bit? The light is better if you're not so close to the bride. Every instruction pushed me further from the center, until I was standing at the edge of my own family's portrait. In the final photos, you'd need to look hard to find me, a shadow at the margin of Jasmine's bright new world. The Hamilton family photos took 45 minutes. The ones with my family? 7 minutes, and Catherine kept checking her watch the whole time. My cousin Keisha tried to joke about it, saying, "Guess we're not ready for prime time," but her laugh was hollow. We all felt it. The way we were being processed, documented, then dismissed. 4 o'clock came like a reckoning. The ceremony space was packed, 300 guests in their finest clothes. I stood at the back of the aisle, Jasmine on my arm, and felt her trembling. "You okay, baby girl?" I whispered. She nodded, but her grip tightened. The music started, not the gospel song Gloria had walked to at our wedding, but something classical that Patricia had selected. As we began that long walk, I caught faces in the crowd. My side, familiar, warm, some with tears already flowing. Their side, appraising, evaluating, some literally taking notes like this was a business presentation. Judge Morrison, who Dr. Hamilton had invited, looked at me like he was trying to place where he'd seen me before. Probably at the courthouse when I'd fought that speeding ticket 3 years back. But here, in his world, I was nobody worth remembering. Marcus stood at the altar looking nervous, but triumphant. His boys from Yale flanked him, all of them in matching Tom Ford tuxedos that Patricia had insisted on. My nephew Terrell was supposed to be in the wedding party, Jasmine had promised, but somehow that had changed to just Marcus's friends. For symmetry, Patricia had explained. Everything was about appearances. The minister, Reverend Dr. Thompson from the Hamilton's church, not Pastor Williams who baptized Jasmine, began the ceremony with words about two families becoming one and blessed unions that strengthen communities. But I noticed he looked only at the Hamilton side when he spoke. When it came time for me to give Jasmine away, my voice cracked on "I do," and I heard Patricia's sister whisper something about emotional control. The vows were when I realized how far my daughter had traveled from home. She'd written them herself, she said, but I heard Patricia in every line. "I promise to be your partner in success. I vow to uphold the values and standards we cherish. Together, we will build a legacy worthy of our family's names." Where was the Jasmine who used to write poetry about thunderstorms and first loves? Who promised her high school boyfriend she'd love him until the stars fell like rain? This was a business merger dressed in white satin, and everyone seemed to know it except me. Marcus's vows were worse. All about prosperity and achievement, maintaining the excellence our families expect. Not one word about dancing in the kitchen or growing old on a porch swing or any of the simple things that make a marriage real. When Reverend Dr. Thompson pronounced them married, the room erupted in applause that felt rehearsed. I watched my daughter kiss her new husband, watched the Hamilton family surge forward to congratulate them, watched myself become invisible in the crowd. It took 5 minutes before Jasmine found me in the receiving line. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, but she was already looking past me to the mayor's wife. I wanted to grab her, to remind her that I paid for this moment with more than money, but Jerome's hand on my back kept me moving. "Let her go, Sam," he whispered. "She's already gone." But I couldn't. Not yet. I still had my speech. I still had our father-daughter dance. I still had these small ceremonies that no amount of Hamilton money could buy away from me, or so I thought. The cocktail hour was when the real separation began. There were two distinct groups, the Hamilton guests, clustering around the bar with their martinis and wine, and my people, wondering why the bartender looked confused when they asked for Hennessy. I heard Patricia tell someone, "We're trying to elevate the experience," as if my family's presence was something to overcome. The past hors d'oeuvres were things I couldn't pronounce, foie gras, pâté, something called amuse-bouche that was smaller than a quarter. Big Tommy, who'd driven down from Birmingham despite not being officially invited, pulled me aside. "Sam, what is this? Where's the real food?" I didn't have an answer. The soul food station I requested had become a Southern fusion experience that bore no resemblance to anything we'd actually eat. Catherine, the wedding planner, found me by the memorial table I'd set up for Gloria. I'd brought one photo, our wedding picture from 1981, and placed it next to a white candle. Mr. Whitfield, she said, her smile sharp as winter, Mrs. Hamilton is concerned this might make guests uncomfortable. Death at a wedding, you understand. Death at a wedding. My wife, Jasmine's mother, reduced to an uncomfortable reminder of mortality. That's my wife, I said, my voice harder than intended. Jasmine's mother. She stays. Catherine's smile flickered. Of course. Perhaps we could just move it to a less prominent location? She'd already started reaching for the frame when Jerome appeared. 6'3" and built like a wall, he didn't say anything, just stood there. Catherine retreated, but I saw her whisper something to Patricia, who looked at me like I tracked mud on her carpet. The reception hall doors opened at 6:30, and the seating chart told the whole story. The Hamilton family and their important guests filled the tables near the dance floor and the wedding party table. My family was scattered in the back corners, some of us so far from the action we'd need binoculars to see the cake cutting. But what hurt most was the wedding party table itself. No seat for me. The father of the bride, who'd paid for this circus, didn't rate a seat at the main table. It's traditional for the wedding party only, Patricia had explained weeks earlier. You understand? I understood perfectly. I found my assigned seat at table 17, between my elderly Aunt Ruth and a Hamilton cousin who spent the entire dinner on his phone, occasionally glancing at me like I might steal the silverware. The speeches started, and Dr. Hamilton went first. For 15 minutes, he talked about Marcus's achievements, his bright future, how proud the Hamilton family was to continue their legacy of excellence. He mentioned Jasmine twice, both times as Marcus's beautiful bride, as if she had no identity beyond that. The bridesmaids spoke. Marcus's fraternity brothers spoke. Patricia spoke about gaining a daughter, though she'd never lost one to gain. And then it was supposed to be my turn. I stood, pulled out the speech I'd practiced 100 times, and made my way to the microphone. But Catherine appeared, hand gentle on my arm. I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitfield. We're running behind schedule. Perhaps we could save your speech for later? After the cake cutting? After the cake cutting. After the important people had spoken. I looked at Jasmine, hoping she'd intervene. She was whispering with Marcus, her hand over his, and when she finally met my eyes, she mouthed, Please, Daddy, for me, for her. Everything I'd done had been for her. So I nodded, folded my speech back into my pocket, and returned to table 17. Aunt Ruth patted my hand, her fingers paper-thin but warm. Baby, she said quietly, sometimes love means letting them show you who they are. The Hamilton cousin had left, probably to find better company, and I sat there, watching my daughter laugh at stories told by people who'd known her for 2 years, talk about her like they'd raised her. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance would be postponed to keep the energy up. Another tradition, another moment, another piece of my relevance efficiently managed away. 8:30 came with the cake cutting, and finally, they let me speak. By then, half the Hamilton guests had stepped out for cigars or were deep in conversation at the bar. But my people were listening. I stood at that microphone, looking at what remained of the audience, and pulled out my speech. But the words on the paper seemed suddenly wrong. All that practiced gratitude, those careful phrases designed not to embarrass anyone, they turned to ash in my mouth. Instead, I said, 47 years ago, I met Gloria at a church fish fry in Memphis. She was wearing a yellow dress and laughing at something her sister said, and I knew right then my life had started. The room got quieter. Patricia's face tightened. I kept going. Gloria and I, we built a life on faith, at hard work, and the belief that love was enough. When Jasmine was born, Gloria held her up and said, Sam, we're going to give this baby girl the world. And we tried. Lord knows we tried. When Gloria got sick, she made me promise to see Jasmine through to her happiness. Made me swear I'd be there for every moment that mattered. My voice cracked, but I pushed through. I've kept that promise, through double shifts and missed holidays, through watching my daughter grow beyond what I could give her into someone I sometimes don't recognize. But that's what love does. It lets go even when the letting go feels like dying. I saw Jasmine's face crumple, saw tears she hadn't planned on crying ruin her perfect makeup. So here's to Marcus and Jasmine. May your love be patient. May it be kind. May it remember where it came from, even as it reaches for where it's going. The room was silent when I finished. Then my side erupted in applause. Church folks who knew a testimony when they heard one. The Hamilton side clapped politely, uncomfortably, like they'd witnessed something inappropriate. Patricia was whispering furiously to Dr. Hamilton, but Jasmine was sobbing. She started to stand, to come to me, but Marcus's hand on her wrist stopped her. He whispered something, and she sat back down, dabbing at her eyes with the monogrammed napkin Patricia had ordered. The DJ, sensing the mood had shifted, quickly announced the parent dances. First, the mother-son dance. Patricia and Marcus took the floor to some classical piece, all proper steps and calculated grace. Then, finally, the father-daughter dance. I walked to the floor, and Jasmine met me halfway. The DJ started to play the song Patricia had chosen, something contemporary I didn't know. But I'd slipped him $50 earlier and made a request. Suddenly, Luther Vandross's voice filled the room. Dance with My Father, the song Jasmine and I had danced to in our kitchen after Gloria's funeral. Patricia's face went red. Marcus looked confused. But Jasmine buried her face in my shoulder and whispered, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry." We danced, and for 3 minutes and 26 seconds, she was my baby girl again. Not the Hamilton bride, not the networking professional, just Jazzy, crying in her father's arms while Luther sang about love and loss and the fathers who never really leave. That's when Patricia Hamilton decided I'd ruined enough of her perfect wedding. The song ended, and before I could walk Jasmine back to her seat, Patricia was there. "Mr. Whitfield," she said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "I think it might be best if you and some of your louder guests considered calling it an evening. We wouldn't want anyone to get the wrong impression about the kind of event this is." The wrong impression. Like joy was wrong, like testimony was wrong, like a father loving his daughter out loud was wrong. Jasmine stood frozen between us, and I waited for her to choose. Waited for her to remember who she was before she learned to be ashamed of it. But she just looked at the floor, and her silence said everything. "Is that what you want, baby girl?" I asked, my voice carrying across the now quiet room. "You want me to leave?" She looked up, tears streaming, mouth opening and closing like she was drowning in air. Marcus appeared at her side, his arm around her waist, protective or possessive. I couldn't tell. "Jasmine's just emotional," he said, like emotion was a medical condition. "Maybe it would be better if—" But I wasn't listening to him. I was watching my daughter choose her new family over her old one, choose their comfort over my presence, choose a future that required erasing her past. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, defeated. Maybe just for a little while, Daddy, just until things calmed down. Just for a little while. We both knew better. This was goodbye. Security appeared so fast they must have been waiting. Not aggressive, just present. 2 young brothers in black suits who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. "Sir, we can escort you to your vehicle," one said quietly. Escort, like I was a problem to be solved. Jerome stood up from table 19, ready to fight, but I shook my head. No scenes, no drama. Just a father walking away from the daughter he'd loved too much to hold on to. As I gathered my things, the speech I'd never fully given, Gloria's photo they tried to hide, my dignity, I heard the murmur ripple through the room. The Hamilton guests relieved, my family outraged, and somewhere in between, Jasmine's broken breathing. Big Tommy met me at the door. "Sam, this ain't right. You paid for all this." He was right, of course. Every flower, every shrimp, every drop of champagne these people were drinking came from my second mortgage. But what was I going to do? Announce it? Demand receipts? Prove my worth with canceled checks? That would just confirm everything the Hamiltons thought about us. That we were crude, transactional, unable to navigate their refined world without making it about money. So I just patted Tommy's shoulder and kept walking. Behind me, I heard Patricia's voice, smooth as silk. "Well, shall we continue with the festivities?" Like I'd been nothing but a brief interruption in their perfect evening. The October air hit different when you're walking away from your daughter's wedding. Cool but not cold, like the world didn't know or care that something inside me had broken. The valet took forever to bring my Corolla, probably because they'd parked it in the back to keep it out of sight. While I waited, I watched through the ballroom windows. The party had resumed. Jasmine was dancing with Dr. Hamilton now, smiling that practice smile. The guests had closed the gap where my family had been sitting, like we'd never been there at all. Jerome appeared beside me, Aunt Ruth on his arm. "We're all leaving," he said. "Every last one of us." And they did. 30 people, my people, walking out of that wedding in solidarity. The Hamiltons probably called it a blessing. The valet finally brought my car, and I gave him the last 20 in my wallet. He looked at it, then at me, and something in his young face softened. "I saw your speech, sir," he said quietly. "About your wife and daughter. That was beautiful." Beautiful. I'd been removed from my daughter's wedding for being beautiful. As I drove away, I saw more of my family in the parking lot. Some crying, some cursing, all hurting for me and with me. Keisha flagged me down. "Uncle Sam, Jasmine's going to regret this. You know that, right?" Maybe she would. Maybe one day she'd wake up in her big house in Buckhead and realize what she traded for it. Or maybe she'd convince herself this was growth, evolution, necessary sacrifice. Either way, I wouldn't be there to see it. I didn't go home. Couldn't face that empty house with its fresh mortgage and wedding receipts scattered on the kitchen table. Instead, I drove to Oakland Cemetery, to Gloria's grave, getting there just as the grounds were closing. The security guard, an older brother with kind eyes, saw something in my face and said, "Take your time." I sat on the ground beside her headstone, my rented tuxedo getting dirty, and told her everything. How I'd failed. How I'd lost our baby girl to a world that would never really accept her, just use her as proof of their own progressive values. How I'd paid $47,000 to be escorted from my own daughter's wedding like I was some kind of threat. "You would have handled this different," I said to the stone. "You wouldn't have let them erase us." But Gloria was gone, and I was alone, and our daughter had chosen her side. 3 weeks passed before Jasmine called. 21 days of silence while she honeymooned in Bali, posting pictures on Instagram of infinity pools and couples massages. I knew because Keisha kept showing me, thinking it would help to see Jasmine happy. It didn't. When the phone finally rang on that Thursday morning, her voice was different, smaller. "Daddy, can we talk?" I wanted to say no, wanted to protect what was left of my heart, but she was still my daughter, even if I wasn't sure I was still her father in any way that mattered. We had to meet at the Waffle House on Cascade, the one where I taught her to tip generously because these folks work harder than anyone. She showed up 20 minutes late, driving the white Mercedes Marcus had bought her, looking like she'd lost weight she didn't have to lose. The ring on her finger could have fed a family for a year. She ordered coffee, nothing else, then stared at it like it might have answers. "The Hamiltons are saying you ruined the wedding," she said finally. "That you were drunk, that you made a scene." I laughed, bitter as black coffee. "Is that what you're telling people too?" She flinched. "No, I tell them. I don't know what I tell them. How do I explain that I asked my father to leave my wedding?" How indeed. We sat in silence while the world moved around us, working folks grabbing breakfast, night shift ending, day shift beginning. Our people, the ones she'd learned to be embarrassed by. "Marcus thinks we should limit contact for a while," she said, not meeting my eyes. "His parents think you're a negative influence, that you'll try to pull me back into that life. That life, the one where she was loved unconditionally, the one where she didn't have to perform perfection, the one where Sunday dinners meant loud laughter and full stomachs, not judgment and jealousy." "And what do you think?" I asked. She finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw my daughter again. Confused, scared, caught between worlds. "I think I made a choice, Daddy, and now I have to live with it." The resignation in her voice was worse than anger would have been, like she'd accepted a life sentence and was trying to make peace with the cell. "Your mama would be ashamed of me," she said suddenly, tears falling into her untouched coffee. "She fought so hard for me to have choices, and look what I chose." I wanted to comfort her, but what could I say? That Gloria would understand? That sometimes we hurt the ones we love most for the chance to be loved by strangers? That climbing ladders sometimes means stepping on the hands that lifted you up? "Your mama wanted you to have opportunities," I said carefully. "She just didn't know they'd cost you everything else." Jasmine reached for my hand across the table, and I let her take it. Her fingers were soft now, manicured. not like the little girl who'd help me fix cars and plant gardens. "I love you, Daddy," she said, "even if it doesn't look like it, even if I can't show it the way you need me to." We left it there, unresolved, a wound that wouldn't heal, but might eventually scar over. She went back to her big house in Buckhead, to her husband who managed her emotions and in-laws who required her gratitude. I went back to my house in East Point, to my second mortgage and photo albums full of a daughter I'd lost to ambition. But something else happened that day at the Waffle House. Our waitress, an older sister named Dolores, recognized the pain in our booth. When she brought the check, she'd written on it, "Baby, you can't buy your way into heaven, and you can't buy your way out of your roots. That girl will come home when she realizes home is the only place that loves you for free." I kept that receipt, taped it to my bathroom mirror where I'd see it every morning, a reminder that some debts can't be paid with money. 5 years have passed since that October night. 5 years of birthday cards returned to sender, of Christmas dinners with one less place setting, of Father's Days that feel like funerals. Jasmine had a baby 2 years ago, a daughter she named Patricia after her mother-in-law. I found out from Facebook, from a cousin who still had access to her page. The baby's beautiful, has Jasmine's eyes and Gloria's chin, but I've never held her. Never sung her the lullabies I sang Jasmine. Never told her the stories about her grandmother who loved like fire and fought like thunder. Patricia Hamilton made sure of that. Boundaries, she called it, for everyone's well-being. Everyone except the grandfather who dreams about a granddaughter he's never met. The house in East Point is gone now. Couldn't keep up with the mortgage after my back gave out and I had to leave the warehouse. Jerome helped me move into a small apartment near him in Memphis, back where it all started. Sometimes I drive past the house where Gloria and I first kissed, now a parking lot for a Starbucks. Progress, they call it. I call it erasure. But maybe that's what Jasmine learned from the Hamiltons, how to erase the parts of yourself that don't fit the picture, how to renovate your history until it's unrecognizable but acceptable, how to pay any price for belonging, even if the currency is your own blood. Last month, Terrell called me. He'd run into Jasmine at Lenox Mall. Uncle Sam, she looked right through me, like she didn't know me. But then he said something else. She was alone, though, and I saw her sitting in her car afterwards, just sitting there, staring at nothing. I wanted to feel vindicated, but all I felt was sad. Sad for the girl who traded her family for acceptance that would always be conditional. Sad for the granddaughter who'd grow up thinking love came with terms and conditions. Sad for myself, a father who loved too hard and held too loosely, who'd paid for a wedding that was really a funeral, the death of everything we'd been to each other. But here's what I've learned. What I want you to know if you're watching this. Love doesn't leave just because the person does. I still love my daughter. Love her at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep. Love her when I see girls who look like her at the grocery store. Love her when Luther comes on the radio and I have to pull over because the memory of our last dance cuts too deep. The Hamiltons think they won. They got their perfect daughter-in-law, their acceptable addition to the family legacy. But what they really got was a woman who knows the price of belonging to them. Everything and everyone she was before. And one day, maybe not soon, but one day, that price is going to feel too high. When it does, I'll be here. Older, broker, but here. Because that's what real family does. We don't escort you out. We wait for you to come home. If you're watching this and you've ever had to choose between where you came from and where you're going, know this. The road forward doesn't have to burn the bridge back. If you're a parent who's lost a child to their ambition, their marriage, their need to be someone else, you're not alone. And if you're someone who's traded your roots for wings, just remember, wings are beautiful, but they're not anchors. When the storms come, and they will, you're going to wish you hadn't cut the ropes that kept you grounded. That's all I got to say. 68 years old when I lost my daughter, 73 now, and still hoping she finds her way back. Not to the man I was, but to the father I've always been. The one who loves her past her choices, beyond her mistakes, through the distance she put between us. That kind of love doesn't know how to leave, even when it's shown the door. They say time heals, But that's a lie folks tell to make unbearable things seem temporary. Time just teaches you how to carry the weight, how to wake up and not immediately think about what you've lost, how to see weddings at the church and not leave halfway through, how to answer when people ask about your kids without your voice breaking. But every October 5th, I put on my best suit, not rented anymore, just my best, and I go to the Magnolia Ballroom. Not inside. Just stand in the parking lot where they made me wait for my car. I say a prayer for my daughter, for my granddaughter I've never met, for the family we could have been if love was enough. Sometimes when I'm there, I think I see Jasmine's Mercedes in the parking lot, like maybe she comes there too, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. But it's always just wishful thinking, an old man seeing ghosts of what he wishes was true. The security guards know me now. They don't say anything, just nod and let me have my moment. One of them, the young brother who'd escorted me out that night, told me once, "My mama did the same thing to her people. 20 years later, she died trying to apologize." I don't want Jasmine to die with apologies stuck in her throat. I just want her to live remembering she was loved before she was impressive, that she was whole before she was improved, that she was ours before she was theirs. This story, it's not about blame anymore. The Hamiltons were who they always were. Folks who thought their money made them better, their education made them righter, their connections made them matter more. Jasmine was young and hungry for a world that had been denied to her parents. And me? I was a father who thought love was letting go when maybe love should have been holding on tighter, speaking up louder, refusing to be edited out of my own daughter's story. But we all made choices, and choices have consequences that last longer than weddings, longer than marriages, sometimes longer than lives. If Jasmine ever sees this, if she's out there somewhere Googling her father's name and finding this story, I want her to know. Baby girl, the door's not just open, it's off the hinges. Come as you are, Patricia or Jazzy, Hamilton or Whitfield, their daughter or mine. Just come. And bring my granddaughter. Let me tell her about Gloria, about Sunday dinners that fed souls, not just stomachs, about love that didn't need conditions or contracts. Let me be the grandfather who loves her for free, wildly, without measuring her worth in accomplishments. Let me give her what the Hamiltons never can, the freedom to fail, to be imperfect, to be human, and still be treasured like gold. That's my story. A father who paid $47,000 to lose his daughter. A man who learned too late that some prices are too high, even for love. But also a father who keeps paying every day in hope and hurt and stubborn faith that one day my phone will ring and it'll be my baby girl saying, "Daddy, I want to come home." Until then, I wait. I remember. I love from a distance that feels like death but isn't. Because love, real love, the kind Gloria taught me, the kind I failed to teach Jasmine, doesn't die just because the person disappears. It just learns to love in a minor key, quietly, without applause, without acknowledgement, without anything but the belief that love itself is enough reason to keep loving. To everyone listening to this story, whether you're in Lagos or Los Angeles, Memphis or Mumbai, remember this: your family, your real family, are the ones who love you without edits, the ones who don't need you to be impressive to be important. The ones who knew you before you knew yourself and will know you after you've forgotten who you tried to be. Don't trade them for acceptance that comes with terms and conditions. Don't mortgage your authenticity for a seat at tables that will never have your nameplate. And if you already have, if you're sitting in your big house feeling smaller than you've ever felt, it's not too late. Make the call. Send the text. Show up at the door you once walked away from. Because I promise you, someone's waiting. Someone who's been waiting since the day you left, loving you through the leaving, ready to celebrate your return like you never left at all. Thank you for listening to An Old Man's Heartbreak. May your families be stronger than ambition. May your love be louder than shame. May your roots run deeper than your desire to fly. And may you never, ever have to choose between where you came from and where you're going. God bless, and hold your people close while you can.